And a good morning and good day, and to everybody around the world. I'm just still doing a few clicks here. Okay, I think we're ready now. And welcome to the Blueprints of the New. My name is Alex Sersha, and I welcome everybody to this show, and I welcome all of the new people that are joining with us today. Whether you are here live or watching this later, it matters not. You are here present, co-creating this show, co-creating this space of safety, this space of love, this space of acceptance that we are co-creating together at this round table. And also, I'm welcoming all our non-physical beings and non-physical friends that are here with us today. And each of you have brought your own friends to this table because they travel with you everywhere you go. You are never, never alone. And there are lots of things that have happened this week, and as you know, around the world, but also for each and every one of us. For me, I've had my body was quite hurting this week, which is quite unusual, because normally I'm sort of very energetic. I sort of keep going for walks and everywhere, but this week I just had, it's like every muscle was hurting and still is. So it just required more and more sort of quietness, calming down, which was not really easy to do because the energies were just so intense. So yesterday, as I was lying on the ground, I find that if I find some space in the nature as well, even if I do find it that sometimes, if I'm too tired to go, I do go, because just lying on the ground, lying on this earth, it just helps my body to really deal with whatever it needs to deal with. And it was really hard to breathe even. So I just said, okay, I'm going to count to 50, because the mind just kept on interrupting. And I said I'm going to count at least to 50 and say, okay, sorry, I'm a little bit hot here. It's a tropical Queensland. Excuse me for that. I'm just going to... Okay, let's continue. Anyway, so I was lying down on the ground, just counting to 50, making sure that I came back with each and every breath that I took. And it did help a lot. And I ended up counting like this for 200. So just slowly counting each and every breath and coming back to myself, coming back to the earth, feeling my senses, feeling my body as I was lying there. The pain in the muscles didn't go away, but I felt much, much, much better. So today, and often during the week, I get some inklings as to what we're going to discuss at the Blueprints. But this week, what happened is that I just had no idea. And I asked Michael last night, okay, Michael, so what are we going to discuss today? Should I prepare? Because normally I just make sure I'm clean. I just make sure that I'm calm and feel connected with myself for these shows. I don't have to write any notes. I don't have to prepare, because the information just starts downloading, especially in the last week. But last night came and I didn't have any idea as to what we're going to talk about until I lay down, and then I realized, yes, this week it is all about self-love. It is all about accepting additional love, accepting love, unconditional love, as we've never accepted it before. And with all of the things that are happening around the world and that will continue to happen, and all of the things that are being uncovered inside of ourselves, it is time to just step into new levels of this love, into new levels of acceptance. And what it means for us, it means that we just allow more and more and more. Because love, this unconditional love, doesn't come from the human self. It comes from your eternal self. And the unconditional, we're still learning. We are still learning what that actually means. And every time we go deeper, Every time we allow more, every time we are so fearless that we allow more and more and more of this love, we discover its sweetness, we discover its all embracement, we discover its inclusivity of everything and everyone, every part of ourselves. And even though we can radiate this love to others and we can open up all these potentials to other people around that meet us in everyday life or perhaps meet us online, we cannot do it, unfortunately, for them because each and every person has to open up for themselves to this love, to their own eternal self. And especially in times like this, it is hard to realize that there aren't any victims, that on unconscious level, the participants in all of the different things are participants, not victims of circumstances, that are playing, that have agreed on a certain level to play this part on behalf of others so that we can open up to a deeper levels of love, self-love. And we are Michael and we are Michaela. And for those that are open to seeing, you have been able to see the ease of transition, how easy it is when the human self steps back and we step forward. And the energy slightly changes. And yet when you are in this place where you can allow this kind of ease and this kind of dance, there isn't that much change of energy anymore because the human self has been completely changed, has been completely transformed. The presence of your eternal self, of your soul, changes everything. And it does, as you know, it doesn't happen overnight, but it happens and it is happening. And then when things happen in the world which can be hard to accept happen, we have to, it is for us to open ourselves more, to find those places within ourselves, if there still are those places that haven't known love. And we allow love. We allow eternal self to love us in those spaces, to embrace us in those spaces. So instead of going into anger, instead of going into frustration, we breathe deeply through those emotions that are all around us because the mass consciousness is feeling them. The mass consciousness is full of those emotions and in the anger and all sorts of this kind of emotions at the moment. So what we do is we stop and we breathe. And if that helps, we count. We count each breath until we are back to ourselves. Because all of this anger, all of this frustration, all of this questioning of mass consciousness, all of this despair that people are feeling at the moment, they are very strong. They are very energetically strong and thick and heavy. And it would be easy to allow ourselves, it would be easy to allow to fall into those spaces of desperation. Because each and every one of us has lived here for very many, many lifetimes. Each of you have also experienced those spaces of desperation, those spaces of darkness where there is no hope, where doesn't seem to be any light at the end of the tunnel. And for many of us, there are still parts of us that live in this space. And this is what we are doing today within ourselves. We are becoming aware, and we have become aware very much this week of those spaces still within us that are hurting, that are in the darkness, that are in the despair, that feel rejected, that feel left behind, that feel so alone. And this is where that challenge is, that initial, because it is easy to go into the old patterns of however your mind deals with this, however your mind goes into circles, however you used to deal with these kind of spaces when when they came into your consciousness. It is easy to repeat those patterns. It would be easy to become angry at the world. It would be easy to become angry at your soul. Why is this happening? Why do I have to feel this? All of these kind of questions. And yet it is in these moments that we make a different choice. And that is all that is required. It is that choice. And it is the choice where you actually mean it that changes everything within you. When you mean it, I'm going to open up. I am opening up to something different. And this gives your eternal self permission. And it creates an opening where self-love, the unconditional love, can come in and embrace those parts. And let's do this experiment now. Let's feel those parts of ourselves that are still in the darkness, that are still in the pain. And let's breathe with them. And we're not trying to change them. We're not forcing them to change. But they were ready. They were ready to come because they were standing aside, watching what's happening with you, watching what's happening in the world. And then they realized that something has definitely changed. They watched how other parts that didn't know love have knocked on your door, have asked for acceptance, and you have done that, just that you have accepted them. You have opened that door to the unconditional love for them. So these parts also now have come to the surface, have come into your consciousness to say, here we are. We have never been accepted before, so we are scared. We are scared that you may reject us again, that you may turn to us with the face of anger, perhaps even with the face of disgust. Because you didn't want to see us, you didn't want to feel us, you didn't want to own us. And yet here we are. We were lying. We were existing. We were being in the dungeons of your psyche, of your own self, in the deepest parts where light never entered, where love never entered, where acceptance never entered. And all we saw, if we approached you, was a face of rejection. So here we are. We ask you again, can you see us? Can you open to us? Can you allow us? Can you love us? Can you allow this unconditional love to touch us, to change us, to start us on our journey of love, of self-love also? Because on your behalf, we have been holding all these parts that you have not wanted to see about yourself, that you have not wanted to accept about yourself. And we ask you for this acceptance, and we ask you for love, because we are ready. We are ready to see this light. We are ready to dance with you. We are ready to change. And yet you may need some patience also, because we don't know how to do this. We have never been loved before. We have no memories of what it means to be loved. It is something that we wished for. It is something that we daydreamed about in those spaces where we were, in the loveless spaces. But now here we are asking you for acceptance. So now we feel that love. We feel the opening. We allow the love to touch these parts. We allow the acceptance to touch these parts gently, tenderly. And you can feel these parts, how cautious they are at first, because they don't trust. Yet it is what they will learn. And we're not forcing this upon them. We're just being with them. We're allowing, creating space where self-love can dance, where unconditional love can dance. We're just creating space. We're not forcing these parts to change. And yet just doing what we are doing now has already started this change, has already changed these parts, because like they said, they have never experienced this before, this love, this self-love. And you can feel feel this little joy starting to arise, this glimmer of hope that this time it is different, this time everything has changed. And we can feel how it feels when these parts are allowing themselves to finally hope that perhaps this time, yes, it will be different. They will not ever go back to those dark dungeons of suffering, of hatred, of frustration, of prison, of bars, of iron bars. But they're finally brought out into the sunlight, and you can feel them how they squint their eyes if they had some. They squint their energetic eyes because they have never seen the sun. They have never seen the daylight. They have never smelled the beautiful, sensual scents of the day, of whatever season there is at your end of the world. So here, where Alex is, they're smelling the summer, the sense of summer, the heat and the humidity, and the rich scents that come with that, the flowers of the trees, the rich flowers that are heavy in the morning with their sensuality, with all the different promises that promise this beautiful day of sunlight, of the sun rays touching the skin, warming it, playing with it, of the gentle breeze that feels so refreshing, coming from the sea, and the sound of the waves as they lazily crash upon the beach. The little creatures and animals scurrying, going about their business, the song of the bird in the background. And it is the same for each and every one of you, wherever you are, whichever season it is this that you are offering to these parts that have never seen the daylight before. And feel their rejoicement and feel their hope finally has come to a fruition. They didn't know what existed outside of their past. They didn't know that this exists. And yet it will take some time for them to really allow themselves to let go of the fears, to allow themselves to really feel free. Because, dear ones, freedom is very precious. We know that a lot of people speak about freedom, and yet not many have experienced it because they have not been willing to do this kind of inner work that we are doing just right today. Allowing your own parts to become free, allowing your own parts to taste the freedom. Because this is what changes everything. It's a game changer. This is the only game changer there is. Because you can fight outside of yourself, and it is also appropriate. Each and every one of you makes your own choices with regards to this, as to how you can find you can create freedom within your life and what is appropriate for you and for your life situation. But it all starts from within. It all starts from this work. It all starts from this allowance of self-love to enter all of these parts, all of these areas of your own self. And your own self is this vastness of being. Your own self is huge beyond any of your imagination. And at times we hear you say, oh, but why do we have to keep integrating and integrating? And year after year, we're just integrating and integrating. And when will it end? But this is it. You are vast. You are grand. You have so many experiences. You have so much history, so to speak. Not history like the mind imagines it. You have been so many things. And yet it is this freedom that was so elusive before. It is this freedom that you came here to experience. It is this freedom that you came here to realize it. within difficult circumstances, because it is easy to feel free when everything around you is easy and free. But you wanted to know it. You wanted to know this freedom regardless of what is happening outside of you. You wanted this freedom to be such a big part of you, such a complete and utter assured part of you that nothing could topple it, that nothing could break it again, that there would be nothing from outside of you that could make you go into prison again, prison of each of everyone else's making. And the prison that we have created, the prisons that we have created, had to do with all this non-acceptance, unacceptance of all of these parts of ourselves that we didn't want to see. And we want to also congratulate each and every one of you on all of the work that you have already done, on all of the work that you continually to do. Because it is you, dear ones, that are creating all these changes. It is you, dear ones, that are radiating out this ability, this possibility, this hope. That yes, there is a different way. And for some people, this is what you invoke, it's this hope, even though for you the hope doesn't have anymore any place for you in your daily life. Because you are doing the work, you have realized so much. And yet many others that you touch during the day are in a very, very different space. There is still much work for them to do, just in the same way as you have done. The integration, the shadow work. And it is this that the world is entering into. And it is still not quite clear how this will pan out, and how many people will say yes, and how many people will say no, and dig their heels deeper and dig themselves deeper into denials. This is not yet known. And yet you have absolutely created templates, you have absolutely created potentials for those that do choose this freedom, for those that do choose the path of unconditional love. It is absolutely possible. There is nothing that can happen in the whole universe that can reverse this, that can change this, that can make you let go of freedom unless you choose it. And yet life responds, and it grows just as you grow. So it will always bring you things to not to deal with, this is perhaps not the right word, but things that you can integrate, that you can love yourself even more. Because this love, it's not a complete thing. It is not a one-off thing. It is not a thing that you can experience once in a certain shape and size. It will continue to grow. It will continue to go deeper and wider and bigger. And the nuances that it has, the subtleties that it has, you continue to dive deeper and deeper into this self-love. So it is not a perfectionism that we're looking for, not in the old way, not in the mind's way, where something has a beginning, middle, and the end, where something just gets completed and then there is no tomorrow. There is always a tomorrow, of course, in the now moment, and yet you never stop. Because you are a dynamic being, you are a being that keeps growing, expanding, and experiencing. And while you are satisfied in a moment with all that is, you want to experience more and bigger and wider things. And it is for this reason that you keep exploring love in a bigger way. You keep exploring love in a deeper way. And you keep asking, is it true? Show me love, unconditional love. Show me that you can accept even this. So if I show you this part of myself, can you accept it? And you will see that this conditional love doesn't have any ending, doesn't have any conditions. And it is for the human self and it is for the human mind at times very difficult to understand this, very difficult to believe this, especially when it hasn't been experienced before, because all of the love that you have, that many parts of you have experienced up to now, have been conditioned. I love you because you are my parent, you're my child, because you have been a good person, because you have done this for me. I love you because, all sorts of becauses. And yet this unconditional love, what does it actually mean? It means that it accepts everything. That it accepts all the parts of you regardless of what you think they have done, what you think they have transgressed. It matters not. And at times for the human self can be frustrating, the unconditional love, because the human self would like to feel justice, would like to feel vengeance, would like to feel revenge, would like to feel all sorts of these things because it thinks they would be satisfying. And yet unconditional love, this is not what it is. It doesn't operate within those parameters. It doesn't have the agenda. It just accepts everything as it is. Because eventually, all the parts will feel unconditional love. It doesn't matter what part they played on this theater of life, whether they were a good person or a bad person, whatever they committed, whatever they didn't commit, whatever betrayals they created, atrocities. And this is what is really difficult to accept, especially in these times of now, that unconditional love accepts even this. It doesn't judge. And it is here that you can make this choice, that you can choose unconditional love rather than justice. And perhaps justice will happen or not. It doesn't concern us, not today. Today we are talking about unconditional love that doesn't seek justice, doesn't seek revenge, doesn't seek justifications. It just simply is. This gentle wisp of wind, this gentle acceptance, and sometimes fierce acceptance, fearless, all-encompassing. And it is only now that we are realizing just what that means. Because even about 10 years ago, we had no idea as a human self what that meant, what unconditional love actually meant. What we thought perhaps in our human way, in our mind way, that what unconditional love meant that the good peoples will go to one side, the bad peoples will go to the other side. And there will be some kind of separation and then everyone will live happily ever after. And to our surprise, unconditional love means acceptance, not separation. Acceptance, an equal way. It is not a judgment. So feel this acceptance. So choose this acceptance. Choose it. Choose to walk with unconditional love. Choose to allow this unconditional love to flow through you, to radiate out of you. And it means for some of you, it means that you step out of justifications, of self-righteousness, of feeling yourself being on the side of light. And what we mean by that when we say on the side of the light in the old terms, of the light which is separated from the darkness. And yet there is a new term, a new light, which is all-inclusive, which is unconditional love that includes all the darkness. Because if you had access, each and every one of you, each and every one of us, they had access to all of the experiences, to all of the different lifetimes that you lived that are happening, you would realize that we, each one of us, have played many roles, the good, the bad, the ugly, all sorts of roles. There is not even one of us that hasn't tasted All. And this is what we came here to do, to taste in a physical reality within the physical reality. All of us, all the different parts of us, and even more, to experience this unconditional love. Because it is only this unconditional love that can free you, dear ones. And we feel that, yes, you are. Some of you have already experienced this, and some of you are just starting to experience what that means, what it actually is. It is a path to freedom. And the reason why it is a path to freedom, it is because unless you accept all those parts of you that are living in the dungeons of your own self, in the unconsciousness of your own self, you will keep being caught on this wheel of reincarnation. You will keep being drawn back to the earth to experience it over and over again because of those parts that are locked in the dungeons, those parts that are unacceptable and have been unacceptable to you, to your human self. And yet the divine love, the unconditional love, accepts them, frees them. And it is by freeing them that they let go of this wheel of reincarnation, of this wheel of a roundabout that goes round and round and round that you were caught on. So if this is what you choose, and when you choose this kind of freedom, that's what it means. It's a freedom that then gives you the real choices, the choices to do what your heart desires. Because you don't have parts that are unconscious that keep drawing you back into the old games, where you don't really have a choice, where perhaps your mind, where your conscious self is keep saying, okay, I choose this, and yet all these other things happen, and then you wonder, why did this happen to me? And then starts the feeling of victimhood, where you feel a victim of circumstances, but all it is these parts that live in the dungeons of self that are wanting to be free. They cannot be free otherwise. It is not their fault, really, that this is what is happening. It is just the nature of how things work. So the acceptance of self, the enlightenment, the realization is acceptance of self. And it is this that we are realizing, and it is this that we are doing, and it is this that we are allowing now, the acceptance of self, all of it, the light and the dark, and the parts that you don't want to feel and that you haven't wanted to feel in the past. They are the parts that need this love the most. And as soon as this love touches them, everything changes, because they start dancing with the unconditional love, with your eternal self. And there is nothing much that you have to do in this dance, really, as a human being. You only need to allow it. You just need to breathe through all of those uncomfortable energies that happened before this. Because all of those uncomfortable energies that are the gatekeepers to keep you imprisoned. Because what happens is that as soon as you come to this gate, you start feeling uncomfortable. You stop breathing, or you breathe shallowly, and you retreat back into the old patterns. And yet if you choose, and if you do breathe through them, you soon realize that there's only a very thin layer of these uncomfortable feelings. And then the real reunion happens, the reunion of your lost self, the self that was lost to you, to your consciousness for such a long time. And that is magical. And that is freeing. And that is the most precious thing to experience, and for us to witness in so many of you. And we are amazed by you, that you are allowing this, and we are amazed and grateful to you that you are allowing us to witness this, to be your witness. each and every one of you, to this amazing, most amazing work, because there is no bigger, there is no more important work in the whole of the universe than what you are doing. And very often you go through the day and you think of yourself, oh wow, I'm just doing my normal life, I'm just doing my ordinary things, I'm not an important person. And yet when you really wake up to all of yourself, you will see that there was nothing in the whole universe that you could have done that is more important than what you are doing now. So we ask you that every time you look in a mirror, that you thank yourself, that you see yourself, that you perceive yourself, that you allow yourself to feel important, that you allow yourself to feel this grand being, and that you allow yourself to feel the gratitude of each and every one of us, your friends, your non-physical friends, and also your eternal self. Because the rooms of your wisdom are growing exponentially. The rooms of your wisdom are filling. It is your treasure chest, your own eternal treasure chest, that is priceless. There is nothing in the whole universe that is as valuable as your own wisdom that you are collecting for yourself, by your experiencing, by what you're allowing, by what you're feeling, by what you're experiencing, by what you're expanding into. So we celebrate you each and every day that we're with you. We celebrate you, and we ask you to celebrate yourself. And it is this that is needed, especially in the difficult, challenging times of that mass consciousness is experiencing. They don't need to see more disappointment, more desperation. They don't need to see anger, because that's all already there. They need to see that there is a different way. They need to see. They need to feel. They need to feel your radiance of unconditional love. They need to feel your acceptance. They need to feel different templates, that other ways are possible, because they don't have any solutions. The mind has tried. The mind has tried. It did the best it could. And yet it is not qualified for this, as you know. You are the new saviors. And you know that you don't want to see yourself as this. It is not even why you came here, to save others, because as you know, you cannot save anyone. You can just radiate, and other people see their own potentials within themselves. And yet it is you who you are. You, the being with the human name that you call yourself. You are grand. You are loving. And you are fearless because you have decided to do this. Surrounded by the 3D mass consciousness, surrounded by majority of people who live in a very, very different way, who have no idea of all of the things that you have experienced, of all of the things that you carry inside of you. And yet they know there is something. If they but open to it, they know there is something. And more and more and more people are blossoming. And it doesn't mean that others will follow your way exactly. It doesn't mean that they will follow your teachers. It doesn't mean even that they will ever go into the so-called spiritual circles. Because everything is different now. They don't have to call themselves spiritual at all. But you know them. You feel them. You feel that openness. And you can thank yourself for being so brave, for allowing this to happen before anybody else did, for allowing unconditional love when no love existed, for allowing all those spaces that were dark before, that never saw the light, for allowing them to feel this love for the first time, allowing all your inner parts to be accepted. Your adult self, your teenager self, your inner child, all of them loved, all of them in joy. And this joy that we speak of, it is not the joy that or the happiness, as you know, that the mind has imagined in the past. This joy is based on knowing, is based on wisdom, is based on experience, because you know what it's like to be joyless. And underlying all, whatever, regardless of what happens, perhaps even for a day or two, you forget who you are. And yet you remember soon. And that is so different than how it used to be. When there were spaces of no hope. Because now you know underlying it all, that perhaps even that for a day or so, or even longer, you may feel you are disconnected. You may forget. And yet when you remember, that connection happens so quickly. And you feel that continual river, continual flow, continual interaction, that touch, that gentle touch in so many different ways, because that touch between your human self and your soul self cannot be described with words, because it doesn't use words. And when it happens for the first time, it's easy to think that you just imagine things, and yet when it happens second and third time, and you become aware and you notice more, you notice your inner self, your inner world more, the communication becomes unmistakable. And just how much communication can happen in this way. No words are needed. The transmission between your human self and soul self is very effective, multidimensional, and it touches, and it can touch every part of you, parts that even you didn't realize you had, because that's the joy of discovering yourself in a deeper level, more and more and more of these parts, joyful parts, funny parts, happy parts, playful parts, parts that when it starts raining, that you go and dance in the rain and start singing. And allow yourself to be joyful in this way. Allow yourself to be playful in this way. Allow yourself to be silly. Let go of that seriousness that you were taught by mass consciousness, that you have to put on this serious adult face. Because really it is time as never before that you do stand out. And we don't mean that you stand out if you perhaps feel self-conscious in this way, but you stand out from the crowd energetically. You don't follow what they follow. You don't follow their beliefs. And you realize that it is okay to stand on your own. It is okay to believe what you believe. And it is okay to be happy and joyful even when everyone else is upset. It is okay to allow these parts. It is okay to be thought of as weird by those that don't understand. Because you always have your own eternal self to fall back onto. It really is not a problem anymore to stand on yourself, by yourself, in this way, energetically, making different choices, making choices out of unconditional love. And you become much more comfortable with doing that. And at times we know that your heart is hurting because you would want everyone else around you to be making the choices you're making. And yet, as you know, you cannot. We remind you that you cannot make the choices on other people's behalf. It doesn't matter how hard you try. And you have tried. You have spent lifetimes trying to change the life of others, and yet you know it hasn't worked. You can be of assistance, of course, when they ask you. But if they're making a different choice, this path that you have chosen requires that you let them go. And we know that is not a difficult thing, and yet we remind you also that you are eternal. That even that sometimes as a human self, because of your time, because of that you live in time and space. You forget that 5 years perhaps, that get separated from the loved one because they're making different choices. Even if you get separated for a few lifetimes, that is but a very short time in the scheme of things. Because now you having access, full access to your eternal self. Ask your eternal self, ask for these things. Because by that, and then open yourself and allow the answers to come, allow your eternal self to speak with you, to communicate with you, to show you, to teach you. And it is not that it came here at your eternal self is in the role of a teacher, but you together. Eternal self brings its own abilities and sets and skills using the human words. And the human in that dance, you get your insights, you get your aha moments together. So what happens with the eternal self brings a bigger perspective. The eternal self lives outside of time. So for example, next time where you feel sad perhaps, that perhaps a friend that you had or a family member has separated from you because of your beliefs, because of your choices. Ask your eternal self to give you a bigger perspective, to allow that bigger perspective. So what happens then, eternal self creates that space. And it makes itself available to you. So you can touch all of its parts. And then you realize and you see from a vantage point of timelessness just how little 10 years is. Because you're not separating from these people, you're not separating from these beings forever. It is only for the short period of time, really, when you're outside of time. And this is what makes such a big difference, and this is what makes your life enjoyable. And it makes everything that you do and everything that happens for you in some way so much easier to deal with, because you always can have this different perspective. And we know that at times perhaps you can forget that you have these abilities, that you have these options, that you have these skills, that you can do this. So whenever something happens, you always can ask for your eternal self for the assistance in this way. And sometimes it doesn't happen straight away. It's not that the eternal self doesn't respond. The eternal self responds in an instant. Because remember, eternal self is timeless. It knows every single thought you have. It knows every desire. It knows straight away when you have made a certain choice, when you have made a certain decision. But sometimes what does take time is to be changing the patterns within yourself. It is to be letting go. It is to be integrating. So this is what sometimes people can forget, this process of physical world. Because there are certain natural laws that happen within the physical world, that have its own timing, that have its own season, and that is not going to change but you have changed. Because you now have access to the timeless spaces within yourself. And that changes everything. So we remind you to do this as often as you can. Whenever you're in a worry, whenever you're in doubt, ask your eternal self. Ask yourself as eternal self for the understanding, for the bigger view, for the overview, for different perspectives. And play with this, be playful with this, be open with this, be curious with this, see what happens, because there is so much that you can experience. And you can experience joy of life even when it doesn't matter what happens around you. It doesn't matter what the world and mass consciousness is doing. And you can let go. And again, this week, is a big opportunity to let go of more guilt. For those that are still feeling some guilt, because that is also a big thing to integrate. Because being as you were, each and every one of you, we were part of mass consciousness, part of group of humanity, and you're part of the experiences on a collective level. So choosing now to experience something different does arise guilt in many ways, especially when challenging situations happen, especially when challenging things happen. Because there is a part of you, there is a pattern within you that would say, I have to feel the same emotions as others. I cannot be happy, I cannot feel joyful, I cannot feel self-love. But what does it actually mean, you see? And this is what you are also experiencing now. For some of you are just starting to, what does it mean when you now are aware of the part of you that is outside of time? So when the humanity, when mass consciousness is saying, this is the time to be serious, what does that mean for that part of you that is timeless, that lives outside of time? It doesn't have this time for mourning, for being serious. And it is these kind of things that are separating you from the mass consciousness. And it is finally because you are looking forward to this. And we know that sometimes in the past, there was a thinking, there was a feeling that it's going to happen at the same time for the whole humanity. And now you realize that no, each and every individual has to realize this for their own self, has to create this, has to allow this within their own timing. So we ask you to play with this, to play with these dimensional realities, which are that you have parts of you which you are now very well aware of for some of you that are timeless. So how does that make sense within the physical reality? So how are you going to play with that? How are you going to make this work? How are you going to allow this? There really is nothing to do but to expand. There really is nothing to do but to allow and to let go of any guilt and to let go of any barriers to experience you. And there is no feeling in this world than this blessed feeling of allowing yourself to be more of who you are. Because before you were trying to be something that was prescribed for you to be from the outside. And yet to just be the simplicity of you, the complexity of you, the multidimensionality of you, there is just such satisfaction. There is such joy in that. There is such curiosity in that. And we invite you to play with this. And we invite you to be in joy with this, to be curious with this, to explore with this. And we also ask and we remind, because we are coming to the end of the show, for those that are here for the first, that have joined us for the first time, there is a Q&A panel on the bottom of the screen where you can ask questions. You can type in any questions that you perhaps have for us. And we will have a look if we have some questions now. Yes, we do have one question. Okay. Dear friends, I have a silly question. Sometimes I feel like repairing my old motorbike and then I feel resistance and don't get myself to do it. Has this indecisiveness something to do with my aspects from the dark? Where does that come from? So what we would suggest is that there is a little bit of a battle going on between the should and your love. Because you love your motorbike, it reminds you of all those open spaces, it reminds you of adventures, it reminds you of just sitting on your bike and driving down the road, just you and the wind and the bike, and all of the freedoms that you feel, the freedom that you feel when you are on that bike and you are flying down the road and you're going around the bends and you're going this way and that way, and the freedom of the body movement and working with the elements in this way. This is what the bike represents to you and represents for many. And then there are the shoulds that the society has put there, whether via parents or teachers, TV, doesn't matter. And it is not that they were bad people because they just tried to do the best they could because they had their own shoulds. And the should said, no, you cannot have fun. You have to do your responsibility things first. And what that happens, normally the responsibilities take over the day. And there is no fun, there is no freedom. There is just but a yoke of responsibilities, of seriousness, of being an adult, whatever that means. And very often being an adult means that you let go of all of the joys, that you let go of all of the fun, that you let go of freedoms, because now, of course, you're an adult. You have to be responsible. You have to make yourself do things that you don't want to do. You have to make yourself, make that money, look after other people. And there is nothing wrong if you have, for those of you that have families, for those of you that have children, of course you do look after. We're not saying that. But there are different ways. Remember, you are a creator. You are a co-creator. And you have, up to now, been, as a humanity, you have been creating from the limitations, from the constrictions. You have created from belief systems, and you have experienced them on your own skin. The belief systems of lack, of hard work, of suffering. And it is not that these are some kind of requirements in some kind of universal book of life. They are not. Because life can be in many different ways. It is just how you create it. So if your belief system includes fun, includes freedom, includes motorbikes, then this is how you will be supporting your family, your children, through activities that are allowing you to live in that way. But if the belief system, the old belief system is that no, once you're grown up, you have to let all of the childish things behind. You have to leave all the childish things behind. Then this is how you will create your reality. And then the reality life absolutely supports your belief system. So what we would suggest for you and for each and every one of you to play with this, to incorporate your dreams, your things that you enjoy, things that make your inner child happy, things that make your teenager happy. Incorporate this in your life and see how it slowly changes, or perhaps for some of you it will change fast. And notice how the shoulds will keep saying, the shoulds will be even louder from the beginning until they realize that you're not listening to them anymore, until you realize that they can come along with you on a motorbike ride and they also can have fun. Then the shoulds die. And you will then still hear those shoulds from the mass consciousness, but they are not yours because you don't identify with them anymore. You don't take them as real. You don't take them as serious. Because your serious life now is to follow your heart, to follow your desires, to follow fun, to follow freedom, the scent of freedom. To follow your inner joy, to follow things that bring you joy. And as you do this, you incorporate them into your life, and you will find that there will be many, many, many parts of you that will be saying, that will be objecting to this. So your ability to step back within yourself and just listen and observe and then make different choices is what is required, is what is your new path, is what are your new choices of freedom. So what you need to do is you ask yourself, does this bring me joy? Would playing with my motorbike, does it bring me joy? That is the only reason you need to do it. So if the should said that you should do something more rational, something serious, don't listen to it. And then your life will follow. Your new, perhaps for example, for some of you, your new jobs, your new work, how you allow money, how you allow abundance in your life completely changes. Because as we said, the reason why for mass consciousness and how you were making money up to now was not because this is the only way to do it, the way we were doing it. You know, follow the normal path, go to school, perhaps finish trade school, whatever university, get a job, do the mundane same things over and over and over again. It is because this is how your belief systems were, but this is not how the universe says, or anywhere else. Anywhere it says that this is the only way how to live. And that this is the only system you can have. So open yourself to the joy and create new systems, new ways. And it will require, and that new path does require, as you know, to keep making these fearless choices. Because perhaps for some of you, there's no one else that you have around you in your life that is making those choices, and the people around you, as they notice that you're making different choices, will keep reminding you of those shoulds, because they are completely plugged with the mass consciousness, and mass consciousness has a lot of those shoulds. There's lots of shoulds in the mass consciousness that will keep reminding you, you shouldn't be doing this, you should be doing this and this and this. So that's the game. Which voices do you listen to? What do you follow? Which sense do you follow? Do you follow the sense and the choices of mass consciousness? Or do you follow your own voice, your own inner voice? And that will bring you to all of the things that you need to do, because all of the things that are still stopping you from living freedom, from embodying freedom, will keep coming up for integration. So at times it feels like you're going backwards, but you're not. All you're doing is integrating them. All you're doing is you're becoming more aware, because these shoulds were there all the time. And you listened to them in the past, but no more. Oh, no, trickster, should. You're not my boss anymore. I don't listen to you anymore. I don't bow to you anymore. I don't put you on a pedestal anymore. Because I am a sovereign being. I am free. I am that I am the alpha and the omega of my own world. And I get to choose what I do. And I get to choose how I spend my time and what I think is important. And I get to choose what I value. And I get to choose what I give my time to. Thank you, dear one. And we congratulate you, because you are making leaps and bounds into your sovereignty, into embodying all of your potentials, all of who you wanted to be, all of who you are. Thank you. Okay, we'll see if we have any more questions. No, I think this is all the questions for today. So we would like to remind you to keep loving yourself, to keep allowing more and more and more of this love. And we love you so. Feel our love, feel our acceptance, feel our joy, feel our celebration with you, on of you, and with you. Until next time in this way, dear ones. But remember, each and every one of you and your eternal self, we are always with you. Everywhere you are, we are with you. Thank you.